As if from a lost world, towering trees emerge from drifting mists and also from time. An ancient forest in every sense of the term, redwoods thrive in a climate little changed from over 20 million years ago, when coast redwoods first took root in what is now California. Yet the redwood family of trees goes back even further in time, back to the age of dinosaurs. In Jurassic times, 160 million years ago, dinosaurs walked among horsetails and ferns beneath a skyline of towering trees, the distant ancestral relatives of modern coast redwoods. A background chorus of insects may have buzzed and hummed, but in many ways, forest sounds would have been strangely different. There were no birds, nor were there rhododendrons, the shadowed landscape devoid of the pink and lavender blossoms. Though the dinosaurs are long gone, the redwoods remain, a living link to this world of giants. And they stand as giants today, relics from a bygone time, living fossils. Today, coast redwoods, Sequoia sempervirens, are the tallest trees on Earth. Even in the fossil record, no trees attain the stature of coast redwoods. The tallest known tree rises over 375 feet in the Redwood Creek drainage within Redwood National and State Parks. Before decades of heavy logging, it is probable that other trees reached even higher into the skies. Why? Why do redwoods grow so tall? Is it competition with other trees for sunlight that drives the redwood skyward? With the exception of Douglas fir, no other tree native to North America can challenge the redwoods in height. Perhaps in the distant past, competition was fiercer. Petrified stumps, some still standing after 60 million years, and fossilized fallen trees tell of when other ancient redwood species thrived at Yellowstone National Park and across much of North America. These were times when even horsetails grew 40 to 60 feet high, and their stalks measured over a foot across. But it may be that redwood's greatest competition for sunlight, for the energy that sustains all trees, came solely from other redwoods. Redwoods can live 2,000 years or longer. They can grow rapidly, and their thick bark resists fire and insect damage. In truth, researchers don't fully understand why or even how redwoods reach such astounding heights. With long life expectancy and fast growth rates, maybe the simplest reason that redwoods grow so tall is that they can. They can grow rapidly, and their thick bark resists fire and insect damage. Like a living cathedral, there is something almost sacred within the wooded heart of a redwood forest. Cloistered in mist, it is an evergreen enclave. An overwhelming quiet muffles the landscape in layered tapestries of green. Instead of Gothic pillars, red-tinged trunks spiral upwards. Their tops are seldom seen, hidden in understories of other trees and spreading branches. The soft, living, vaulted ceilings of leaves and coniferous needles. Woody spires reach high above pews of fallen trees. Above all, this living cathedral is festooned with life, a living sanctuary. The redwood forest is a tribute to life, from its highest reaches to the darkest recesses of the forest floor. In spite of its open appearance, a redwood forest is crowded with life. Because of the remarkable height of giant trees, for any given area, there is more biomass, more sheer weight of living things in a redwood forest than anywhere else on Earth. Even more than a dense tropical rainforest. And so, in some ways, the redwood forest is a shrine to the triumph of life. Redwoods occupy a narrow swath of land along 450 miles of California's coast. From the Big Sur coast south of San Francisco Bay, north to the Oregon border, and beyond. Immersed in summer fogs and drenched by winter rains, redwood forests occupy one of the rarest of all climatic regimes. Winter is moderated by relatively warm, moisture-laden air from the subtropics. Because of this, the Pacific coast of North America is far warmer than most other land areas at similar latitudes around the world. In this wet, mild climate, redwoods thrive. Freezing temperatures are rare and seldom long-lasting. Redwoods require sunlight to power growth and to move vast amounts of water from roots to treetops. Summer is the dry season along much of the Northern California coast. But here, dense coastal fogs bring morning dew to thirsty trees and help to moderate temperatures. And so, in this narrow belt of land wedged between mountains and sea, seldom more than 30 miles wide, redwoods have found a niche for continued survival. It is known as the Redwood Empire. And though transplanted redwood trees can survive in climates that are colder or warmer, wetter or drier, they naturally exist only here along the California coast and into southern Oregon. Even in this limited realm, nowhere else do redwoods attain the heights or the densities than in the northern reaches of their range. Redwood National and State Parks is truly the heart of the Redwood Empire. Fossil evidence reveals that in the distant past, ancestral redwoods thrived in great swaths across much of Asia, Europe, and even Greenland, now known for its frigid temperatures and expansive ice cap. Prehistoric redwood forests covered much of North America and reached north into Alaska. With both subtle mountain building and catastrophic events, continents slowly drift across the face of the planet. In North America, the rise of the Rocky Mountains, Great Basin Ranges, Sierra Nevada, and the coastal ranges eventually blocked the flow of warm, moist Pacific air that redwoods depend upon, possibly constricting former ranges. Fossils, almost identical to modern redwoods, can be traced back in time to 23 million years ago. The closest living relatives to coast redwoods are giant sequoias, found only on the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada range between 5,000 and 7,000 feet in elevation. Fossil evidence suggests giant sequoias were also widespread in the distant past, when climatic conditions were more favorable. Once established, giant sequoias may live 3,000 years or longer, 1,000 years more than coast redwoods. Unlike coast redwoods, giant sequoias live in a climate embraced by winter snows and freezing temperatures. No tree equals the girth or the sheer mass of giant sequoias. In Sequoia National Park, the General Sherman tree is the largest of all living trees by mass, but at around 310 feet in height, it comes nowhere near the height of tall coast redwoods. Redwoods have one other living relative, and intrigue seems to surround this exotic, seldom-seen tree. It wasn't even identified until 1944 in China. Protected in a secluded temple garden in Sichuan province, a Chinese forester discovered an unusual tree, one that did not seem to fit neatly with other trees known to be growing in the region. The trees were named Metasequoia, dawn redwood. Diminutive by comparison, dawn redwoods grow to about 120 feet. Unlike coast redwoods and giant sequoia, they have a life expectancy of just 200 years. Like bald cypress, which is in the same family, dawn redwoods are among the few conifers that shed needles with the approach of winter. Yet a closer inspection reveals a flat opposing needle structure similar to that of coast redwood's lower branches. Despite their immense size, coast redwoods come from the most humble of beginnings. Their cones are tiny in comparison to the cones of most other conifers. Rarely do seeds sprout, and those that do seldom reach maturity. Like many other conifers, fire can play a role in the early life of a redwood. Many large trees bear the dark scars of fire-ravaged bark. Yet fire also clears the forest floor of competing undergrowth, enabling young redwoods to thrive. Unlike Douglas firs and many other trees, redwood sprouts grow well in the deep shadowlands of ancient forest. Over millions of years, natural selection has left sprouts tolerant of shade. Still, like virtually all other green plants, young trees need the sun's energy to thrive and grow. Windfalls or the death of a giant redwood can open the forest canopy, allowing shafts of light to reach the forest floor, bringing explosive growth to young redwoods. Redwoods can also clone themselves from bulbous burls, most often found near the base of trees. Appearing to be no more than the equivalent of a scab or a tree wart, redwood burls are more like a lifeboat, a most unlikely lifeboat. Burls sometimes display feathery branching sprouts. If wind, fire, or disease claims the upper trunk of a redwood tree, the root system redirects nutrients to the burls, and new shoots begin their climb to the sky. Because the root system is already fully established, the growth rate of redwood burl offshoots is extremely rapid. What's more, it is the very same tree, sharing the same life fingerprint, the same DNA of the damaged or dying trunk. It is an exact clone. Because of this, it is difficult to pinpoint the actual age of some redwoods. As a result of the lifeboat effect, a 2,000-year-old tree could be much, much older. And so in some ways, redwood trees are true survivors, demonstrating their own individual ways of skirting death. But it doesn't stop there. In case of severe storm damage to its crown, a redwood can continue to grow from a side branch that becomes a surrogate trunk. Throughout redwood forests, trees with damaged crowns from weather and exposure have found ways to survive. As in most forests, fire is a threat to small redwoods. Yet in maturing and old-growth redwoods, thick, stringy bark provides protection from fires enjoyed by few other trees. Up to a foot or more thick, the fibrous bark both fends off flames and serves as an insulating heat shield for the vital living cambium layer below. Even trees that experience severe fire damage can live on. Hollowed by fire, some redwoods seem to defy death by healing shallow wounds and continuing to grow around a non-existent core, another triumph of life over death. Deep chainsaw cuts that would kill most trees are almost miraculously healed by rejuvenating bark filling in the wound. Also, the reddish-brown bark and heartwood is almost impervious to insects and forms a daunting defense to most common tree diseases. Because of the heights attained by old-growth redwoods, a single tree may live in several different microenvironments simultaneously. Its needles tell the story. On lower branches, needles fan out to capture weak sunlight filtering through to the cool, dark, and humid underworld beneath the forest canopy. Protected from harsh extremes and winds by legions of other tall redwoods, the delicate needles are a part of the lush vegetation adapted to life in a world of shadows. At the highest reaches, the tree experiences stresses unknown to the sheltered environments below. Strafed by ocean winds, seared by sun, and desiccated by bouts with aridity, the needles flatten to cover living branches in a cocoon-like sheath. More like scales than needles, their profile lessens water loss and exposure to drying sun and the elements. Silver crowns top many trees, bearing the mark of the elements, including lightning strikes. Still, most trees with crown damage continue to thrive. While many coniferous forests display an almost unending panorama of uniformity, an old-growth redwood forest is different. Old trees present distinct craggy faces to the world, each wearing the successes and the scars of the centuries. The most remarkable part of a redwood tree may be its root system. Radiating out from the trunk up to 80 feet, the root system that supports redwoods is shallow. There is no deep taproot to draw water from a lowered water table in drought years, or to anchor trees from high winds. In some dense stands, old-growth trees may form an interwoven web of roots that help stabilize the trees. Yet in winter, North Pacific storms can slam into the coast with near hurricane-force winds, and with enough power to topple giants. A redwood tree's best defense against storms is the shelter it finds among other redwoods. In some ways, the term coast redwood is a misnomer. Though near the Pacific Ocean, redwoods are seldom found at the coastline. Instead, they are found in more protected environments just inland. Redwood National and State Parks encompass several distinct ecosystems. Offshore, rocks and kelp beds are a sanctuary for fish, marine mammals, and bird life. The passage of seasons brings change to this offshore marine environment. With spring's arrival, cormorants nest on secure rocks and islands safe from land predators, as do common murres. Harbor seals raise their young in protected waters in the lee of headlands, rocks, and in kelp beds. Gray whales follow the coast during migrations to and from feeding grounds off Alaska. Sea lions are skilled hunters of this underwater realm. Humans are undoubtedly the most effective hunters of all. Almost unseen during daytime, night reveals the ethereal fog-masked glow of fishing boats that ply nearshore waters in search of crab, salmon, and other species of fish. Of all Redwood Park environments, the shore is perhaps the most demanding. Belonging to neither land nor sea, its character changes hourly with the tides, and seasonally with storms that batter the coast. In winter, sand is sometimes washed from shores into deeper waters, leaving cobbled beaches. This is the land, sea, and aerial domain of cormorants, pelicans, and gulls. Gulls scavenge the bounty of the shore. As the tide recedes, one of the most distinctive of the shore habitats appears: tide pools. Underwater real estate is valuable, and predators are numerous, both below and above the water. Only specially adapted animals can survive in this always shifting zone between land and sea. On shore, salt-tolerant grasses, shrubs, and small ground-hugging flowering plants colonize dune areas above the normal high water mark. Rock faces and niches on wind-blown cliffs support a miniature world of low-lying shrubs and tiny flowering plants, and among them, wild strawberries. Trees such as spruce, alder, and occasionally Douglas fir move in to colonize sandy dunes. But all tree life is kept in check by winds, the highest tides, and storm surges. Most trees cannot tolerate repeated inundation by salt water. In spring, fields of lupin along Gold Bluffs Beach turn dunes into blue and purple hummocks. elk emerge from the forest to open dune fields along the coast to forage among spring flowers and grasses. The coastal forest begins with stunted alder and wind-blown stands of Sitka spruce that defy the brunt of Pacific storms and dehydrating salt spray. Here again, natural selection is at work, and only the hardiest trees and plants survive winter's onslaught. Several feet above the ground, leather ferns embrace crooks in the branches of Sitka spruce. Inland, leather ferns occupy a similarly rugged environment, except that now it is found 300 feet high on outstretched branches in the redwood canopy. Just inland, somewhat sheltered from the onslaught of gale-force winds, Sitka spruce trees stand taller. They can include giants that reach heights of 250 feet, with diameters only slightly smaller than redwoods. Sitka spruce are tolerant of salt spray, and near the coast, they coexist in a mixed forest until an unseen boundary is crossed. The boundary where salt spray ceases to cause redwoods harm. Many small streams drain the low coastal divide in the spruce forest and flow directly into the Pacific Ocean. But there is only one Fern Canyon. Luxuriant and alive, the narrow canyon winds from Gold Bluffs Beach into coastal hills. Draped in ferns, soft green canyon walls drop 30 to 50 feet and flutter with the slightest winds and canyon currents. But always, spring brings drama and an enthusiastic renewal of life. Uncoiling ferns are spring's unwritten signature, releasing the yearly renaissance of green that makes Fern Canyon one of the park's special places. The seasons merge, drifting gently in and out through the years. In the lee of protective ridges, high on bluffs, and inland beyond the unblunted headlong force of storms, the Redwood Empire begins. And there is nothing else like it in the world. In spring, even the darkest of redwood shadowlands come to life. It begins with slowly unfolding ferns and a variety of small, ground-hugging flowering plants. They time their emergence to gather available sunlight before being overpowered by larger plants and shrubs that can outcompete them. In March and April, three-leaved, three-petaled trillium becomes one of the most visible early blooming plants on the forest floor. In late May and early June, rhododendron's pink flowers bring more color to fog-shrouded redwoods. North America's largest salamander is found in streams and among the dank forest duff beneath towering redwoods. Though the foot-long Pacific giant salamander is an amphibian, some individuals never lose their external feathery gills and live a life entirely underwater in small streams. For salamanders that make the normal transition to life on land, mottled skin camouflages them among the rich detritus of the forest floor. Most active at night, they avoid sunlight and rely on burrowing into moisture-retaining duff as a protective buffer for sensitive skin. With so much life in the forest, it stands to reason that there is also much death. Innumerable varieties of fungi help disintegrate and clear the forest of downed trees and dead vegetation. Sometimes they reveal themselves on bark and display colorful spores. Necessary agents in the cycle of life and death, fungi are a vital part of a thriving old-growth redwood forest. Mushrooms reappear with fall rains and transition with many varieties through the wet season. A topside vision into the network of life, death, and decay beneath the surface. The banana slug is the slimy denizen of the forest floor. Spring flowers, leaves, and new shoots bring them out on a quest to devour. When spring passes into summer drought, the redwood forest is slowly enveloped by a cooling sea of fog. As cold waters of the Pacific cool warmer, moisture-laden air above, the dew point is reached and fog drifts over, in, and among the trees. The very same fog helps redwoods survive by bringing much-needed moisture. Though redwoods can survive beyond the reach of infiltrating, cooling summer fogs, there seems to be a close relationship between fog and the overall distribution of redwoods. As the power of the summer sun burns through the fog and shafts of light reach the forest floor, light-sensitive redwood sorrel retracts its three leaves for protection. It is a slow-motion ballet that has been millennia in the making. Small streams, such as Trillium Creek, become mere trickles of water during the summer. Because water is vital to redwoods, the largest trees are most often found in bottomlands of rivers and streams. There are exceptions, and large trees cluster on steep slopes and high ridges, such as Lady Bird Johnson Grove, 1,200 feet above the waters of Redwood Creek. Even so, many of the largest trees are nurtured by rivers and high water tables in floodplains and benchlands. Rivers bring water and life to the redwoods, but sometimes they also bring death. Floods and smothering debris flows have taken huge tolls, particularly since logging and other human activities have quickened the pace of runoff. There are layers of life in a redwood forest. Rhododendrons and huckleberry trees rise 15 to 25 feet over ferns and small shrubs. Ironically, the rich forest vegetation is sometimes rooted in very poor soils, washed downstream from mountain bedrock known as serpentine. In fact, minerals found in soils eroded from serpentine rocks are poisonous to many plants. Yet in the toxic ooze of serpentine-laced bogs, carnivorous pitcher plants thrive. Insects trapped in the acidic broth of Darlingtonia are digested by the plant, allowing it to occupy a special niche in the nutrient-poor and often toxic serpentine soils. Leather ferns and epiphytes colonize some of the highest branches of redwoods. In this seldom-seen world, moss and lichen-covered outstretched limbs serve as a runway and nesting ground for an endangered bird that spends almost all of its life at sea, the marbled murrelet. Rivers make up another distinct ecozone within Redwood National and State Parks. Some streams, like Mill Creek and Redwood Creek, are born in the Coast Range. The Smith and Klamath Rivers flow from the Siskiyou and Cascade Mountains to the east and have had the power to cut deep canyons through Coast Range mountains to reach the sea. The riparian zone includes canyons and floodplains that are periodically scoured by floodwaters. People have been drawn to rivers for thousands of years. For untold generations, autumn and winter salmon runs provided a vital part of the diet for local tribes, and continue to do so. Today, visitors come to riverbanks during summer months for boating, swimming, and water activities. Salmon runs provide world-class sport fishing. the same rivers can fill with wild torrents of water during winter and spring floods. Near rivers, osprey raise their young in heavily constructed nests of woven branches. Bald eagles fish at rivers and along the coast. Far below, river otters also fish in the rivers and streams that flow through the forest. Omnivores, black bear live off berries, roots, small animals, and whatever they can find. Rarely seen, mountain lions are a part of this environment, but they are really here to hunt animals that live where the forest ends: black-tailed deer and elk. Roosevelt elk are native to the prairies, meadowlands, coastal beaches, open hills, and the stream corridors of Redwood National and State Parks. Of 4 species of elk in North America, Roosevelt elk are the largest. Elk are most often seen at Prairie Creek redwoods and along the string of meadowlands to the south, and at Gold Bluffs Beach and Crescent Beach. The prairies compose a small ecozone that is distinct from the redwoods. An abrupt line separates tall redwoods and the ferns and grasses of the prairies. Though relatively small, the prairies support the largest animals. Elk also frequent the park's highest ecozone, the Bald Hills. Often above summer fogs, the Bald Hills receive more sunshine and have long been used by native peoples as hunting grounds for elk and deer. Bald Hills open meadowlands make up the highest ecozone found in Redwood National and State Parks. In spring, carpets of wildflowers overlap in time with colors of blue, purple, red, white, and yellow. Here, too, the sweep of seasons and storms leaves its mark on the land. But humans have left the most profound marks of all. The Bald Hills landscape is human-engineered and has been for thousands of years. Lightning strikes open tree-covered ridges and slopes to sunlight in the distant past. Native Americans expanded on what nature began, transforming the Bald Hills into a treeless hunting ground. For generations, a mutually beneficial relationship developed between human hunters and prey. By purposefully torching the land, Indian peoples created a high prairie environment that was a magnet for elk and deer. Humans needed the game, and elk and deer used the prairie shrubs and grasses. In the 1870s, when the Lyons family and other settlers first established ranches in the Bald Hills, they found an already cleared land, perfectly suited for cattle and sheep ranches. The first peoples to come to the North Coast, Paleo-Indians, may have followed the coastline or rivers into the Redwood Empire. Some archaeologists believe the Pacific Northwest coast is among the earliest regions of the Americas to be inhabited. The coastline of today was not the coastline seen by the first Americans 11,000 to 14,000 years ago. As melting glacial ice caused sea levels to rise, forests slowly succumbed to encroaching ocean waters. Because of mild weather and the wealth of food found along North Coast shorelines, there is archaeological speculation that humans have lived here since their early arrival in North America. Because of rising sea levels after the Ice Age, if there were ancient villages along the coast, they are now below the water's surface and far out to sea. From around 4,000 years ago, villages dotted the coast, clustered near estuaries, and temporary fish camps lined rivers that cut through the coastal ranges. Like native peoples to the north, the Yurok, Tolowa, Cholula, and Hupa were tied to the seasonal cycle of the return of salmon. They carved canoes for fishing and travel on rivers and estuaries. Weirs on rivers funneled salmon to waiting fishermen with dip nets. Redwood beams and shingles were fashioned into rectangular plank houses, built partially into the ground. A central fire warmed sleeping platforms on cold, storm-lashed nights. Over the course of the centuries, they developed sophisticated cultures steeped in ceremony and ritual. In ceremonies through the long winter, stories were told by flickering firelight. Whether Yurok, Cholula, Tolowa, or Hupa, oral histories told each villager who they were, the origins of their people, and stories of the spirit world, sometimes seen in the natural world that surrounded them. For Europeans, the age of discovery came late to the Redwood Empire, hidden by coastal fogs and racked by the fury of winter storms. California's north coast defied easy exploration. Though first sighted as early as 1579, threatening offshore rocks and shoals secured the North Coast's isolation, and ship captains found few protected harbors. Even though Spanish missionaries and colonists settled much of California by the mid-1700s, the fog-bound heart of the Redwood Empire remained terra incognita. 1775. Spanish ships anchored near a Yurok village in Trinidad Bay. With British Hudson's Bay Company traders pressing southward from Oregon country, the Spanish crown felt compelled to establish a visible presence along the north coast. While most exploration of the California coast was by ship, one expedition came overland, from the east. Jedediah Smith was a mountain man. As a fur trapper and explorer in the Rocky Mountains, he gained an almost larger-than-life reputation. In 1827, his driving curiosity led an expedition of trappers and mountain men from Utah into the Spanish-held deserts of California. The expedition was plagued by hardship. After crossing the Colorado River, they were attacked by Mojave Indians, losing 10 men. Later, Spanish authorities arrested Smith and his remaining men and ordered them to leave California. Heading north toward Oregon country, the mountain men camped by the Smith River in June 1828. In Northern California, Smith and his men saw trees unlike any in the East or anywhere else. Smith followed his dream to be the first to view a country on which the eyes of white man had never gazed, and to follow the course of rivers that flow through a new land. 1849. Gold. California or bust. The cry was heard around the world. California had just been ceded to the United States by Mexico the year before. And in 1849, one of the greatest migrations in human history was underway. The 49ers crossed the continent by wagon train on the California Trail and by ship to San Francisco Bay. Both routes held dangers, but while overland routes became safer over time, no humans could control Pacific storms. Miners followed rivers into the Redwood Empire. With each gold discovery, tent towns and mining camps sprang up. On the coast, Eureka, Latin for "I've found it," swarmed with 3,000 miners in 1850. Also in 1850, miners found placer deposits at Gold Bluffs Beach. It was old gold. Deposited ages ago by the Klamath River, it accumulated in the river outwash gravels that now make up the bluffs. The fine gold dust was difficult to isolate, but in the 1870s, the Union Gold Bluff placer mine was profitable and continued operations until 1902. Miners hit mother lodes in Jacksonville and other diggings in southwest Oregon. In 1853, Crescent City was settled as a seaport to supply booming mining camps in Oregon and as an exit to the outside world for gold and silver shipments from the mines. Freight wagons followed a perilous wagon road blasted into cliffs of the Smith River Canyon and hewn into redwood forests. The gold rush changed the landscape. A harbinger of what was to come, the first sawmill was built in Crescent City to mill lumber for shipping crates. In the 1850s, redwoods were being logged from Santa Cruz north to Mendocino. The first noted voice for protecting redwoods came in 1852, when California legislator Henry Crabb called for a national park. In 1879 and in the years afterwards, others raised concerns. But by the 1890s, almost all redwood forests passed into private control, often aided by corrupt politicians. For decades, ancient redwood forests remained protected from loggers' saws by only one thing: their gigantic size. Existing logging equipment and techniques were no match for large redwoods. Eventually, though, technology caught up with nature. Double buck saws grew ever longer. Teams of loggers undercut redwoods and drove in wedges to let gravity assist in the felling of giants. At makeshift harbors, log chutes and precarious cable tramways delivered sawn redwood lumber to waiting ships. By the late 1800s, teams of oxen, mules, and corduroy roads were replaced by steam locomotives. Wire cables and steam winches, donkeys, skidded log sections to yarding stations. Twisting ribbons of steel snaked into ancient forests, and high trestles spanned gorges. Locomotives and flat cars were overwhelmed by the size of old-growth redwood log sections. Mills were built along rivers, using water to power saws. New tools, manufacturing prowess, and engineering upscaled the entire industry to meet the challenge of logging giants. Fortunes were made as forests fell, but it all came with a cost. Landscapes were decimated. Soils were eroded and disturbed by skid roads, railroads, and the sheer impact of heavy equipment moving even heavier logs. Logging railroads and camps crept incessantly northward toward the heart of the Redwood Empire, now on the verge of becoming a fallen empire. In 1918, the Save the Redwoods League was organized. Strangely, it wasn't founded by preservationists, but by paleontologists dedicated to science. Decades earlier, fossil evidence was discovered that linked redwoods to the ancient past. University and professional paleontologists were concerned that modern redwoods' direct living links might go the way of the fossils if not protected. Led by the Save the Redwoods League advocate Newton Drury, funding drives and matching funds from the state of California purchased over 100,000 acres beginning in the 1920s. These lands became part of the California State Park system. Jedediah Smith, Prairie Creek, Del Norte Coast, and Humboldt Redwoods State Parks. In the early 1900s, preservation efforts were boosted by the construction of the Redwood Highway during the teens and 20s. Now, for the first time, large numbers of people could visit the long-heralded forest of giants. The Redwood Highway linked the coast and the Redwood Empire to the outside world. Finally, the public could see firsthand what they stood to lose. The stock market crash and the Great Depression ushered in the Roosevelt administration, and a new emphasis on conservation. The Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, included public works projects such as visitor centers, shelters, and trail building. The Redwood Highway brought tourism, and with it, roadside attractions, motels, and business to previously isolated coastal communities. The Redwoods entered the modern age. Singer Woody Guthrie popularized the Redwood Highway in folk music, bringing it to millions via radio.
This land is your land, and this land is my land, from the California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went a-walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway, saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, World War II occupied the country. The war came to the North Coast and the Redwoods in the form of coastal defenses. Designed to look like a farm from a distance, concrete block buildings south of the Klamath River disguised a radar facility that scanned the horizon for Japanese ships and aircraft. After the war, the baby boom and the demand for housing unleashed the greatest threat to the world's tallest trees. Logging kept pace with America's booming economy and the efforts to rebuild war-torn nations. With gasoline chainsaws, heavy-duty haul trucks, and industry's newfound respect for redwood as a hardy, decay-resistant building material, the ancient forests had more than met their match. Preservationists were alarmed. Even though some of the most significant redwood groves were set aside in state parks, botanists feared that even protected parks were at risk from outside disturbances, particularly logging. In 1955, unprecedented floods ravaged the Redwood Empire. Clear-cutting and poor logging practices destroyed fragile soils and left standing trees downstream vulnerable to floods, smothering debris flows, and erosion. Protected only on paper, over 500 giant redwoods in Humboldt Redwood State Park were toppled by unchecked floodwaters. Trees that stood for centuries were claimed by floods unseen in the lifespan of standing redwoods. Unseen in 2,000 years. It became clear that redwoods were vulnerable, their future interwoven with what was happening upstream in their watershed. The Save the Redwoods League was joined by the Sierra Club, founded in 1893 by naturalist John Muir. The race was on to protect remaining redwoods and secure their future survival by acquiring and protecting an entire watershed. Only then, botanists believed, would the future of the species be safeguarded. 1964 was a pivotal year. Winter rains were heavy, and logged, clear-cut slopes couldn't hold back runoff. Floods ravaged the Redwood Empire, now truly on the verge of becoming a fallen empire.
From those areas where communications have not been lost, come reports of serious damage to bridges and highways. Flood stages in most areas have already passed the 1955 flood level, and further disaster is threatened by the still rising waters. The city of Eureka and all of Humboldt County are completely cut off from highway travel in all directions. As the river rises and gains velocity, tons of debris are slammed against the bridge, and the crack between bridge and highway widens. Constantly rising, the swift currents repeatedly ram the weakening structure, and the bridge begins to tremble. One last powerful assault, and another obstacle to the rampaging waters is eliminated.
A National Geographic magazine article in 1964 focused the nation's attention on the discovery of the world's tallest measured tree in the Redwood Creek watershed upriver from the town of Oric, California. The 1960s were also a time of social upheaval and change on many fronts. Civil rights, women's rights, the war in Vietnam, and a newly emerging environmental consciousness that was sweeping across the nation. Federal legislation was introduced to purchase and protect the world's tallest known trees and the Redwood Creek watershed in a national park. Now, another race was on, a race between loggers and preservationists. In this race, neither could claim total victory. In a logger's land rush, almost 70% of proposed parklands in Redwood Creek were cut before legislation in 1968 and again in 1978 could be pushed through Congress. However, the tall tree grove and many other old-growth stands were saved. What the park legislation did accomplish was to save the land, this unique habitat where redwoods grow best. Equally important, today the park also preserves the opportunity for a future that includes a redwood renaissance. The trees are alive, and so is the hope that the Redwood Creek watershed will become what botanists had sought: a managed, protected, but natural habitat, a lifeboat for the species. To help achieve that end, since its creation, the park has been actively engaged in restoration efforts to counter the effects of logging in Redwood Creek and Mill Creek drainages. Politics and legislation are a reflection of the times and ultimately the will of the people. Yet by any human time frame, redwood forests are timeless. They cast long shadows, but their significance reaches far beyond shadow lines. For thousands of years, these giant trees have helped shape the lives of native peoples. A deep, abiding respect for the land is still a part of Yurok, Tolowa, Cholula, and Hupa cultures. Here is a living shrine to the triumph of life. Beneath the towering giants and forest canopy is a sheltered, green, luxuriant world that harbors more life than any other place on Earth. Yet in some ways, this may be a lonely planet. For now, there is no evidence of life beyond our sheltered blue-green home. In the cold expanse of this vast picture, what is so rare seems especially valuable. And nowhere is life so profound, so abundant, as here in the shadow of giants.